Alrighty, we are moving on from talking about these high and low sounds for I got a letter and translating that onto piano. So our goal for today is to simply go through and listen to the song again, analyze the end of each line. We are only going to go through the oh yes section at the end of the song in each line. We are going to find those highs and lows and then take them and put them on our keyboard because those high and low sounds have names on our keyboard and they are G and E. So let's go through the rest of this lesson and try to explore these. So first, let's listen to I Got a Letter. When you listen to it, just listen to it. Try to hear the words, try to hear the piano, even the snapping. It's a fun, jazzy song. So let's listen to I Got a Letter. Alrighty, so that is I Got a Letter. Now when we go to listen to it the next time, you're only going to hear the words. So the words in this song do repeat themselves. It says, I got a letter this morning. Oh yes. And then the second line is the same exact thing. I got a letter this morning. Oh yes. And the oh yes at the end of the line is more of an exclamation. The person who is getting the letter is really excited. Back in the day, as you read in your history part and saw in today's lesson, it took a long time for letters to get to people in the old mail carrier days whenever people had to travel across many different types of terrain to get letters to other people. Regardless of how far you go back, there's a great history of people trying to get information to another person, and one way that they did that was by writing things down. So let's listen to the words of I Got a Letter. It goes, I got a letter this morning. Oh yes. I got a letter this morning. Oh yes. So the two oh yeses that we are looking at sound a little bit different, but that's what we're looking at for today. So when we're counting the word syllables, we know that in I got a letter this morning, we find that there are only, at the end of it, that there are only two parts. Oh, yes. So there are technically only two syllables, but what we're going to look at is the duration of these syllables. Sometimes we only have one syllable in music that is expanded over many beats. So that's what we're doing with this actual end part of oh yes. So let's keep going. So in verse 2, it's the same thing. We still see I got a letter this morning, and then it goes out to oh yes. Okay, so those two verses are the same. So even though we have two word syllables in oh and yes, that's oh yes, 1, 2. So even though there are two syllables, they take up a very long amount of time to complete. So we are going to look at oh yes, and this is where we can specifically find our high and low sounds in the song. So earlier in the lesson, you have read a story about mail carriers that had to deliver letters to people, and sometimes they were in places like the mountains or low in a valley, or they had to travel through some rough terrain to get these letters to other people. So G and E, if you can believe it or not, are very similar on our keyboard. Those mail carriers had to go to high places and low places, and on our keyboard we have high places and we also have low places with high and low sounds. So if you're going to switch your thinking here today, it's going to be switching that we do have high and low sounds on our keyboard, but now we are specifically naming those sounds. G is our high sound on our keyboard, and E is our low sound on our keyboard. All right, so let's see where they would actually go in the verse 1, oh yes. All right, so if we look at it, it sounds like this. Oh yes. So the low sound that we now know, that is E. We need to find if the O or the yes matches that low sound. Here's our low sound E. This is E, this is our low sound. So which one, O or yes, matches E? Is it O or yes? That's right. So O is our low sound in verse 1. Now if we have our high sound, G, does that match O or yes? That is correct. So it's yes. And let's not forget that O holds out for 4 beats. So you would see it like this. You could go O and make that beat just travel so you know that it takes up that amount of time or 4 beats. And then our yes is high, just like our G. Yes, and it's the same thing. It travels for 4 beats. So you could clap it and make it look like this. Yes, just to show that you take up 4 beats, that sound is taking that much time to be played. So our pattern for verse 1 is or low, high, oh yes, which is E, then G. All right, so that's the pattern for verse 1. Let's figure out the pattern for verse 2. So now we still have our high-low line, and we still have the same high-low sounds. G is high and E is low. So the last part in verse 2 sounds like this. Oh, yes. And that's it. So let's listen to the first one. It goes, oh. Does that match a G or an E? It's O. Does that match G or E? Good, that matches G. So we have O. And that O holds for 4 steady beats, just like we saw the last time. This is going to be a new note name for us, so we'll see that here in the next lesson or so. And then the last one is yes. So that last one is a low sound or an E. Okay, and that one also holds for 4 beats. That is one sound that holds for 4 beats. So the pattern for verse 2, the oh yes, goes oh yes. So it's 4 beats of G and 4 beats of E. Okay, it goes from high to low. So you did a very good job today of looking at this pattern. So each verse has that pattern. Verse 1 goes, oh, yes, and verse 2 is the opposite. It's high-low. Oh, yes, and each part takes up 4 beats. Like I said, this is a hint to a new note that we are going to be learning soon. So that G and E pattern goes from low to high. So it's E, then G, and you can see this on the screen where they're positioned if you're having trouble finding where that E and G are. And then it's the same thing for verse 2 where it goes from G to E. The pattern is just switched. We're only dealing with 2 sounds, high or low, G or E. Okay? If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Take the time to sing through the song. You have the song on your assignment page. Listen to it. Maybe get out your keyboard and play the oh yes and oh yes part when it gets to it in the song. Take this time to practice that.